So is her track record as good as many in the media have made it out to be?
Michele Bullock, I think credit where credit is due. I think this is an excellent appointment. I had the privilege of actually working for Michele Bullock in the payments area of the bank a good 15 years ago now, so it's going back a long while. But she's a very capable individual, also with wide experience across many different parts of the bank. I was amazed to discover, I didn't know until I was reading about this morning, that she's actually been at the bank for nearly 40 years actually, so she's had wide experience across many different parts of the bank. But crucially also, what I think makes this an excellent appointment is that she's a very practical person. I have a personal view that actually there was a tendency in the 2000s and through much of the 2010s for economic policy positions to suddenly people to become too concerned about academic credentials in those positions. Now, Michele Bullock has very solid academic credentials, but there was a tendency to think that if you didn't have a PhD from some prestigious American or European university, then somehow you couldn't get to the top job. And I think actually we ended up with policy making that was markedly worse as a result of making some appointments of people who were down that track, partly because they actually became too obsessed with theoretical aspects, not with focusing just on the practical issues of what was going on with the economy, and also because they tended to become a bit too concerned with what other high, prestigious academics might think of how they were doing, rather than focusing more on what the struggling family out in Campbelltown might think about how monetary policy is being run. And so I think it's actually very good that Michele Bullock has a very practical background and I think have a very practical take on monetary policy and the competing factors that will be pulling decisions on monetary policy in different directions.
What impact do you think that practicality of her approach will have as Labor pushes for organisational change in the RBA?
Well, again, I hope that she will bring a preparedness to be independent-minded and thoughtful. I think it was actually appropriate that there was a review of the Reserve Bank's performance instituted by the previous government. I didn't think the decisions that came down with the review were necessarily particularly good or bad. But I think it was appropriate there was a review because under Governor Lowe, and particularly when Michele Bullock's predecessor, Guy Debelle, was the Deputy Governor, the Reserve Bank made the biggest policy mistakes it has made since the late 1980s, I think. And so it was appropriate that there be a change. It's appropriate to bring someone like Michele Bullock in. But I hope she will be independent-minded about this and not feel compelled to look around the world and see what's being done in other countries.
Sorry, I've got to bring it in there, Dr. Stone. Sure. We'll have to pick this up again another time. But thank you for your contribution tonight.